Vinicius Oliveira will outwork Kyler Phillips.
Vinicius Oliveira!
My whole life is a fight since when I was a young. I faced bad things in life. I usually fight when I was a young at school, on the street, in my house as well. So fight makes me a different person. I face bad things in life, and the solution that I find to solve all my problems in life in the past was with my hands. So fight is everything to me, and because this, my mind becomes stronger like a rock. I'm so stronger, I am amazing. From Pinheiro to world, my name is Black Dog.
Vinicius vs Kyler are set for UFC 318, and although Vinicius isn't necessarily a huge name in the UFC, at least at this point, I'm here to tell you that this guy will not only run through Kyler Phillips, but he will also slowly start to build a name for himself at the bantamweight division. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA, I make opinionated MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that post notification bell. Also be sure to hit that join button for exclusive channel perks. But anyways, let's get into it. Although Vinicius hasn't been in the UFC all that long, the limited times that we did see him fight, he's been extremely impressive. As when you look back at his UFC debut against Brennan Sobai, he was able to get a finish in probably the most impressive way possible. As in the third round of that fight, he was able to land a perfectly timed switch knee to the face of Brennan Sobai. And that knockout was so impressive, it ended up being one of the best knockouts of 2024. In Vinicius' next fight after that, he was able to dominate Ricky Simón over 3 rounds, landing a bunch of shots up top, landing a bunch of leg kicks, and overall he was able to win a very easy 30-27 victory over Simón. And in Vinicius' last fight, he was able to beat Said Nurmagomedov in a relatively close fight, but of course at the end of the day, he was able to squeak that victory out. And that's really where he leaves us off at today, as Vinicius only has 3 fights under his belt in the UFC thus far, but in my personal opinion, I think Vinicius has shown a lot of great things thus far, and I think he has a lot of promise going forward. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Vinicius Oliveira is going to outwork Kyler Phillips? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is Vinicius' physicality. Because I mentioned this in a lot of my videos and even some of my live streams, but I always talk about how important physicality truly is. And when you look at Vinicius Oliveira, he's extremely physical. He hits pretty hard as well as being able to take a shot extremely well. And I think this physicality is going to help out and benefit Vinicius Oliveira in 2 separate ways in this fight versus Kyler Phillips. The first and most obvious way is Vinicius is just going to hit very hard. I think Vinicius is going to land a bunch of shots on Kyler from round 1 to round 3. And eventually I wouldn't be surprised if Vinicius is able to land some sort of big shot. Whether that's a flying knee, whether that's a head kick, whether that's a step and elbow, there's a bunch of different options that Vinicius can go to and land a big shot and potentially find the TKO from there. But the other reason for why I think his physicality is going to play huge in this fight versus Kyler Phillips is due to the fact that he can take shots very well. Because Kyler Phillips is typically a guy that starts off fights pretty well. Early on, he lands a bunch of jabs, a bunch of right straights, has a decent amount of success against a lot of the opponents that he goes up against. But as the fight does progress, and if his opponents are still there, that's really where we start to see Kyler start to gas a little bit and his opponents start to have more success. So the fact that Vinicius has such a good chin and is so physical, I think will play a huge factor in this. Maybe Kyler Phillips will win round 1, maybe he'll have a lot of success in the first round, but once we get to round 2 and once we get to round 3, Vinicius is still going to be there. And I think mentally and also physically, it's going to be very fatiguing for Kyler Phillips. And at that point in round 2 and round 3, that's really where Vinicius Oliveira is going to start to take over. And I think that's all aided by his overall physicality, both with his punching power as well as his chin. But the next factor for why I think think Vinicius Oliveira is going to outwork Kyler Phillips is due to the pressure. Because when you watch Vinicius Oliveira fight out there, one thing he does very well is pressure his opponent. And once Vinicius is able to pressure his opponent alongside the cage, that's really where he has a lot of success, and that's really where he's able to find some of his finishes. As when his opponents are alongside the cage, Vinicius just really goes to work and throws a lot of different weapons at his opponents. As he's able to throw leg kicks effectively, he can throw body kicks, he can throw head kicks, he can throw jabs, right straights, switch stances, switch knees. There's just so many different options and so many different weapons that Vinicius Oliveira can throw at his opponents. But I think when you specifically look at this fight between Vinicius and Kyler Phillips, this pressure is going to play a huge factor as well. As when you look at Kyler, as I kind of touched upon before, he does most of his best work when he's on the front foot. But if you're able to pressure Kyler Phillips, you can really have a lot of success for one, but also for two, you can really start to tire him out. I think we saw that in the Rob Font fight a lot against Kyler Phillips. So I think if Vinicius is able to establish pressure from round 1 to round 3, it's going to accomplish a couple of different things. Obviously, it's going to startle a lot of the offensive success that Kyler Phillips can throw back Vinicius Oliveira's way, but also it's going to slowly start to tire out Kyler Phillips. And as I said before, once we get to round 2 or once we get to round 3, I think we're going to be talking about a pretty tired Kyler Phillips and a Vinicius Oliveira that's really starting to pick up the pace. But the next and last factor for why I think Vinicius Oliveira is going to outwork Kyler Phillips is due to his cardio. Because although we haven't seen a huge sample size for Vinicius, we have seen him in a couple of very high-paced fights. And in those high-paced fights, yes, Vinicius does get tired, but he has a very unique ability to just push through things. We see a very similar thing with Dricus du Plessis. As in a lot of Dricus's fights, it looks like he's physically tired. When you look at his fight against Israel Adesanya, he looked that way. When you look at his fight against Sean Strickland the first time, he looked that way. But Dricus as well as Vinicius both have a really good ability to just push through things. And I think this fight between Vinicius and Kyler Phillips is probably going to be fought at a very high pace, and I wouldn't be surprised if both of these guys, Vinicius and Kyler, both get tired. But the difference between Kyler and Vinicius is going to be able to push through things, and I think he will be able to continue and keep up a very high pace, at least on his end. And I think that would be a huge differentiating factor in this fight between these two men. So overall, based on the cardio, based on the pressure, and based on the overall physicality, I think Vinicius Oliveira just has a bunch of different built-in advantages, and I think those factors are going to play huge in this fight versus Kyler Phillips. So if I had to give my official prediction for this matchup, I would lean with Vinicius Oliveira via decision. But at the same time, in round 3 or late round 2, I wouldn't be surprised if Vinicius is able to land some big shot, whether it's a switch knee, whether it's a head kick, or something like that in order to find an earlier finish. But as I said, my official prediction is Vinicius via decision, winning rounds 2 and rounds 3. And I think if Vinicius is able to win this fight against Phillips, especially if he's able to do so in dominant fashion, there's a very bright future ahead of Vinicius Oliveira. I talk about this a lot, but I think when you talk about guys that are super physical, can hit pretty hard, and take a shot really well, those guys typically turn out to be top 5 guys or even champions of their respective divisions. And for Vinicius Oliveira, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does end up being a top 5 fighter at the bantamweight division. Of course, in terms of his skill, it's certainly there as well. He does have good striking, he has good leg kicks, he has very good variety on the feet, but I think based on his physicality is the main reason for why I'm so high on Vinicius Oliveira. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this fight versus Kyler Phillips, but also what does end up happening in the rest of the career of Vinicius Oliveira. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Vinicius Oliveira is going to outwork Kyler Phillips, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.